final thing that I wanted to talk to you about has to do with you calling out Carlos Mencia, which was freaking awesome. Back in 2007, you called out Carlos Mencia because of joke thievery.
Plagiarism, yeah. Plagiarism, I think, in every other art form, whether it's music or literature, is taken very seriously. There's lawsuits, people get fired, their careers get destroyed.
Are you saying you believe in intellectual property?
I believe that if you create something, it is, well, here's what I believe in. This is most important. I believe that anybody that tries to take any of your ideas and pawn them off as their own is a piece of shit.
Right.
And they should be outed as being a piece of shit. Now, with Mencia, the real problem was like he was profiting off of this and destroying other comedians' careers. So
before you continue, we actually have a snippet of that video where you confronted him as he was doing stand-up, and I thought it was...
That's not exactly what happened. What exactly happened was, it was at the Comedy Store, and the Comedy Store works, it's a tag team show, which means there's maybe 20 comics in the night, and we each bring up the next guy. Like at the end of the set, I would yell out to the cover booth, who's next? And they'd say, in this case, it was Kurt Fox. I said, all right, Kurt Fox, very funny guy. I go, he's a writer for Carlos Mencia's show, because that's what we called him. We used to call him Mencia.
Yes,
and so
that's fucking hilarious.
I bring up Kurt Fox. Kurt Fox goes on stage, and Mencia is in the back of the room. He comes onto the stage, takes the microphone away from Kurt Fox, because this was in the middle of his, he was on The Mind of Mencia, his career was booming, he was selling out these big arenas, and he was a big star. And he goes, yeah, he talks a lot of shit, but he doesn't have the balls to say that shit to my face, which I thought was hilarious. I'm like, what are you gonna do? You gonna joke me to death? Like, what? I don't have the balls? Like, this is cute.
Hell no.
So
no,
I just walked right onto the stage, and for the beginning of the conversation, I didn't have a microphone, and he had a microphone.
Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the video, and then I want to get some more information.
It's so beaten to death.
Yeah, let's take a look.
If someone steals a riff from a song, that shit's in the news constantly. Motherfuckers steal shit and make it on HBO. They steal shit, they put it on television. What are you saying? Listen, I know you guys saying that you're acting like a little bitch. No, you're not saying that. Yes. They're agreeing with me, motherfucker. They're not agreeing with you. They don't even know what the fuck I do. They don't even know what the fuck I do. Why would it matter to you? Why the fuck would it matter? Why would it matter to you? Why would it matter to you? No, that's just showing to you that your interest in me is fucking retarded. For my friends. No, not from your fucking friends.
Damn. Damn, that got pretty heated.
Yeah, it got heated, but it didn't get physical.
Of course it didn't get physical. We would have known. There would have been like media reports on that.
Well, it was a bad scene because he was, look, throughout the history of comedy, there have been people that have stolen material from other comics. And it's a horrible situation when an established comedian steals from a guy who's coming up, because it takes, like, say if you have a bit, say if you write a bit on cameras, or whatever the fuck the bit is on. A bit takes a long time to develop. They're ideas, you take them on stage, you have to figure out the right way to set it up, you sit in front of your computer pulling your fucking hair out, you bang things back and forth, and you shift them around, you try it this way, you try it that way, and it takes a long time to come to fruition. You plant that seed and you water it every time you go on stage. This asshole used to come along and take these fully developed plants, pull them, and then pass them off as his own. And in full knowledge of agents, in full knowledge of the clubs, in full knowledge of producers and executives, everyone knew what the fuck he was doing. It wasn't a secret. It wasn't, the only way to stop him from doing that was to make a video like this. It was the only way.
And what happened? What was the aftermath?
He's gone.
Yep.
I mean, that's the aftermath. I mean, where is he?
You destroyed the man's
you can still
career.
find him if you go looking. You can find him at a comedy club somewhere. But no one takes him seriously as an artist anymore.
No, I love that you called him out, and that's a difficult position to put yourself in, because there are people there to see him, his fans.
But they weren't. He wasn't even supposed to be on stage that night.
Oh, really?
No, he was just there at the club, probably stealing material. He's probably hanging out in the back of the room watching comics, which he used to do. He used to like sit in the back of the room, watch comedians, and then wind up doing their shit on television.
So I'm going to ask you a controversial question. It's not controversial because it's going to make you look bad. It's controversial because it's going to make me look bad, because you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead. But it's an interesting thing that I want to bring up with you. So there were rumors that Robin Williams was known to steal jokes.
It wasn't rumors. It was true. Yeah, it was without a doubt. He definitely did. I've never heard of a person that was accused of being a plagiarist that wasn't a plagiarist. I've never heard of a false accusation. And Robin definitely did it. He used to riff. And Robin was, in my opinion, like one of the best actors ever. If you see that 1 hour photo, you ever seen that movie? Like many movies. I think he was a brilliant actor. His style of stand-up comedy was this sort of riffing, thinking like he was coming off the top of his head, like this ad-libbing style. And a lot of times when you're doing that and you don't have like a set structure, you run into these spots where like, fuck, you don't have anything to say. And what Robin used to do, apparently, was do other people's stuff. And, you know, I know guys that he did it too, you know. My friend Steve Pearl, a guy used to go to the Comedy Store all the time. He did it to Kinnison. He did it to a bunch of different comics. Is it a bad thing? Yeah, it's a terrible thing. I mean, Robin was known for like writing checks for people that you know, he stole jokes from. It's terrible, but you know, what can you do? I mean, I don't know if he ever addressed it. I believe he did. I believe he actually kind of admitted to it and said that he accidentally would do it, that they would these things would come to him when he was riffing, which when you take into account his issues with depression and, you know, his psychological makeup, it might very well be possible that these things would come out of his mouth and then he'd be like, fuck, like he couldn't believe that he did it. I know guys who have done that, who have like been in the middle of a riff and then said someone else's joke and then realized, oh my God, I just said someone else's joke.
Yeah.
It drives them fucking crazy.
On accident? Has that
I've never done it by accident. I used to steal my friends' jokes. Greg Fitzsimmons and I, when we were young, we really shouldn't have been, we talk about this all the time, we really shouldn't have been working professionally. We weren't good enough yet. Greg and I started out like within a week of each other. And we would steal each other's stuff when we go on the road. And we would say like, hey man, I did your blowjob joke when I was in Connecticut. It worked great. And we would laugh about it, but we kind of had an agreement. We both steal each other's stuff.
Yeah.
I've definitely done premises that I wasn't sure if I had heard them before. But that was like when I was starting out. When you're starting out, you're kind of like, I mean, you really, no one ever should be paying a young comic to talk. You're really not worth it, you know? And if you do get a gig, you're really hustling. I mean, you're bullshitting. You really, I mean, anytime, like if you're doing comedy for like a year and someone's paying you, you're ripping people off.
How the hell did you go from MMA to wanting to be a comedian? Like, by the way, being a comedian takes balls. I can't even imagine doing that as a career. TYT did like this tour thing where we're like trying to be funny, and I fucking hated it because I don't want to try to be funny. I'm not funny. I'm trying to inform people with, you know, news and stuff. So, like, what got you into it? Why?
Well, I used to teach martial arts for a living. That's what I did. I taught at Boston University when I was 19. I used to teach accredited course in Taekwondo. I was US Open champion and I won a bunch of Taekwondo tournaments. And from age 15 to 21, that was my entire life. That's all I did was martial arts. And I started getting a little bit disillusioned with it as I was getting older. I was nervous about my mental health. I was worried about head trauma.
Yep.
That was one of the things that I was really concerned with because I started doing a lot of kickboxing as well. I had a few kickboxing fights. And I was ultimately thinking like, this is not, like, right now I'm okay, but this is not gonna last. Like, I'm gonna run into a point in my life where I'm dealing with like some serious issues. Like I'm gonna be compromising the way I think. Right. And it was incredibly important to me to not do that. So I was trying to figure out a way out. And I was disillusioned with Taekwondo and I was getting into other more effective martial arts, and I had friends that were always telling me to be a comedian. And it was just, I would make people laugh like in the locker room, because martial arts gyms and places where people are training and fighting, they're really scary because you're gonna go out there and you're gonna spar, and when you're sparring, you're essentially like using all your muscle to throw your bones at each other. Yeah. I mean, you're slamming shins into heads and punches and all this crazy shit that's like, it's very terrifying. So I would be the guy that was making everybody laugh in the locker room.
You were like the icebreaker.
Yeah, and I would be like, making jokes and doing impressions of our friends having sex, and I was always good at doing impressions of friends.
You're really good at impressions. Your Alex Jones impression is spot on. Even your Molyneux impression was spot on.
I need to work on my Molyneux. My Alex Jones is much better. Black helicopters. But I was hanging out with him this weekend in Austin. He was off the tilt. It was awesome. You haven't partied with Alex Jones until, you haven't partied until you party with Alex Jones when he's really drunk.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like a good
he gets
time.
lit
Hopefully
up. He's a real Texan.
Yeah.
Oh, he takes his shirt off. He'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. He's a misunderstood guy in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But so I would make fun of my friends. I would we would joke around together, and they would all be laughing, and I would feed off that. I would try to make them laugh more, so I would come up with these little things that I would do.
Yeah.
And that's how I became a comedian. My friend Steve Graham is still one of my best friends to this day. If it wasn't for him, I would never be a comedian. He was an ophthalmologist, and he's this crazy guy who was in the Air Force, and he literally said, you should be a comedian. Like, grabbed me by my shoulders. You should be a comedian.
You're hilarious. I saw you just a few weeks ago at the Improv in Los Angeles, and you were hilarious. It was very, very good. So I'm glad that you went along with their advice. And
yeah, I'm glad too.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't get kicked in the head all these years. I'd be fucked by now.
Yes.
He was profiting off of this and destroying other comedians' careers. So
before you continue, we actually have a snippet of that video where you confronted him as he was doing stand-up, and I thought it was...
That's not exactly what happened. What exactly happened was, it was at the Comedy Store, and the Comedy Store works, it's a tag team show, which means there's maybe 20 cars get destroyed.
Are you saying you believe in intellectual property?
I believe that if you create something, it is... Well, here's what I believe in. This is most important. I believe that anybody that tries to take any of your ideas and pawn them off as their own is a piece of shit.
Right.
And they should be outed as being a piece of shit. Now, with Mencia, the real problem was like...
Final thing that I wanted to talk to you about has to do with you calling out Carlos Mencia, which was freaking awesome. Back in 2007, you called out Carlos Mencia because of joke thievery.
Plagiarism, yeah. Plagiarism, I think, in every other art form, whether it's music or literature, is taken very seriously. There's lawsuits, people get fired, their career. Kurt Fox goes on stage, and Mencia is in the back of the room. He comes onto the stage, takes the microphone away from Kurt Fox, because this was in the middle of he was on The Mind of Mencia, his career was booming, he was selling out these big arenas, and he was a big star. And comics in the night, and we each bring up the next guy. Like at the end of the set, I would yell out to the cover booth, who's next? And they'd say, in this case, it was Kurt Fox. I said, all right, Kurt Fox, very funny guy. I go, he's a writer for Carlos Mencia's show, because that's what we called him. We used to call him Mencia.
Yeah,
and so
that's fucking hilarious.
I bring up